DVD-Format meldet sich zurück von der Game City 2016 live aus dem Wiener Rathaus. Neben mir steht jetzt Falko Poiker, and Falko, you are the level design director for Watch Dogs 2.
That's right.
So you basically designed a level for a game that is basically a level. So in open world games, there are no classic levels anymore. And especially when you take a real city such as San Francisco, how do you turn that into a playable, let's call it sandbox for a video game?
Well, that's a lot of questions. So to start with, we do distort reality quite a bit. Our game world is much smaller than the real world. Of course, we don't have the sprawl that a city actually has. We really compress it to put the landmarks near each other with much less residential in between. So there's a lot of changes that we do. We do cut some parts of the cities. We don't have all the towns that a city would have. We have the whole Bay Area, but we don't have all the cities of the Bay Area. But then your second question is more about how do you design a level in a city. And actually, it's funny. What you're thinking of is more in terms of the corridor gameplay, where you have a corridor and then a room, and then you have some guards and another corridor and a room. We have a different philosophy of doing that. So we have, when you go around a city, you could even do that outside. You go and you say, hey, this would be a good place for there to be guards or something like that, right? So, excuse me. So we'll actually be scouting the city, our own city that we built, and we'll say, oh, this looks like a good place that we could have, some gangsters that are doing a drug deal or whatever, and then we'll start modifying that to allow for the player to come in. And one of our philosophies for Watch Dogs 2 and also for Watch Dogs 1 is what's called 360 approach. So the idea that you have a location, say a courtyard, the player can come from different directions, and it's all about player choice, right? So a player wants to come from one side, well, that's great, another player from the other side, but then also in terms of player choice, it's also do they use combat, do they use stealth, or do they use what's very unique to Watch Dogs, which is the trickster style. And then by designing an area to support, coming from all these different directions, playing with different styles, then all of a sudden you have a space that just lets the player express themselves whatever way they want. All these systems, they work together. So a person can go in with a gun, shoot a couple of times, and then disappear, and say, okay, now I'm going to go stealth, and then use some of the hacking. It's all supported, so it all works together, and the player really can do what they want.
And that, for me, is like the biggest wow effect, because if you give the player near infinite possibilities of stuff they can do, you have to program near infinite numbers of possibilities. How do you do that? And especially, you have to limit the player in some way. How do you do it without the player actually noticing that there are limits, that there are barriers, invisible walls, which would be the old school equivalent to that?
It's actually, I find it actually, it's not that difficult. It is difficult, don't get me wrong, but if you think of these things as systems, so shooting is a system, you polish the system and make sure that works, and then stealth uses a lot of tools that the shooters use. So for example, cover systems, they work for stealth, they work for shooting. It's obviously about tweaking it and getting the right distances and the right sizes and getting the right speeds, and then those two systems are what people expect. So you work those, you polish those, that's a standard game. Then you add our system on top of that, and every time we add more hacking, we add more abilities to the player, it's almost like the player says, oh, neat, I can do this too. Oh, wow, I can do this too, I can do that too. So they're not going to be hitting invisible walls, because we're essentially giving them presence of more things they can do. Eventually they will hit walls. It's impossible not to hit a wall. Yesterday I saw a guy trying to land we have the RC jumper, it's a remote controlled car. He was trying to land it on top of a dog. And I was like, well, we never really thought about that. The dog has the dog has collision, and so it lands on top, but then it falls down. So that means the collision is too small. Well, those are two systems at work that aren't exactly compatible, so it won't exactly work. But in real life, would you be able to land a remote-controlled car on top of a dog? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Well, that depends whether it's a stuffed dog or a real dog.
Exactly, or a robot dog.
Yeah. I could land them, but then I need to go to the doctor and treat myself for bite marks. No, but you know, the thing is, every player has the different approach. That's clear. And I think for me, I think it's you give us like 50 presents for each area, for each combat zone, let's call it that, and every player takes only 10 of these presents. So when I go in, maybe I don't take any presents at all because I'm more the Rambo type. You know, I go in guns blazing and shoot everything in sight. Yeah, but I tried the trickster approach with both the RC drone and the flying drone, which is incredible. You can now hack things that are on top of the building. And I remember how difficult that could have been sometimes in Watch Dogs 1. Yeah. And especially, I mean, I'm not the stealth kind of guy, so I don't know how people see me if you program people with 8 eyes in their heads just when I come around. Right. But it's really interesting to see the same scenario in different types and different styles of gameplay. Yeah. And especially, it's not that we have to do it alone. That's the next thing, because you can play the entire game in co-op.
Correction there. So the main missions you can't play in co-op. Okay. Those are single player, right? So when there's like big cinematics and stuff like that, you're playing the main mission. But all the open world stuff, so what you saw in gamescom, so there were some missions that are specifically made for co-op. Oh, okay. But then just if you explore the world and all the things that you can collect and the things you can find and all the little zones, the forbidden zones are not necessarily always little. We do have big compounds. Yep. Those are all doable by 2 players. But just to be accurate, the single-player game is not a 2-player, unfortunately. I mean, it's just really, really complicated to make a game support, cinematics with 1 player and then cinematics with 2 player, and then the whole story. So it was very complicated to do that. So we didn't go that far. But the rest of the game, the open world, which is a good, huge chunk of our game, I don't know, 60-70% of our game is just the open world and exploring the open world. That all is possible with 2 players.
And that's, I mean, my most boring question in this entire interview, because I'm really interested in that. Do you have any specs in your head? How big is the open world? How many % of San Francisco are actually in the game? And especially when you turn the real city into your gameplay sandbox, what's more important, the accuracy concerning the real world or the dynamic flow of combat in certain areas or gameplay?
Well, it's always about gameplay, of course. So we rarely make any compromises just to be accurate, just to be like the real San Francisco. That said, there's plenty of things in San Francisco that can be considered gameplay worthy. So the landmarks, for example, Coit Tower on the top of the hill, it's actually a gameplay element, even though it's not necessarily designed for that, because what we found is players have a really easy time navigating in our world because we have these landmarks that are poking up around. So they'll be driving around and like, okay, Coit Tower's over there. I know that Golden Gate Bridge is there, and then the city's back there. So sorry, I think I lost your question there for a second.
Don't worry, I lost it too. Dynamic gameplay versus accuracy.
That's true. And then you were asking for statistics on size.
Yes. Said boring.
Yeah.
Even I forgot.
I can't really give you exact statistics, but the real San Francisco is 49 miles by 49 miles. 49 square miles, which is 7 by 7 miles, and our entire world is a lot less than that. It's so 7 by 7 miles. I think it's I think in terms of kilometers, it's like 12 kilometers by 11, 12 kilometers, and our map is like 6 by 7. So and that's the entire Bay Area. So how does that shrink? How does that compare to the real San Francisco? I'd say we're clearly a lot less, and it goes even more extreme if you think of something like Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is this massive space. It's a huge urban suburban sprawl, and we've just done a very small part of it. But we called it our sort of Disneyland Silicon Valley. The idea being that we take all the kind of cool elements of Silicon Valley because, unfortunately, if you do your research, Silicon Valley isn't actually the most beautiful architecturally place.
Yeah.
It's boxes with lots of suburbia. So we really crunched it down, took all the nice buildings, put them all together, took Stanford University, took some of the really iconic things of that area, kept them together, and it's actually very, very small. I mean, it's nothing compared to the real thing. But what we're always trying to do is to get the player to have these aha moments. Anybody who's been to San Francisco, even San Franciscans themselves, that we saw with E3 and Gamescom, whenever we had people from San Francisco, they would say, "Oh, it feels right. You know, I know this looks right." And you even see pictures of Pier 39. You know, you compare the two, and they're still kind of different, but you go there and the feel is still the same. People are like, "Okay, it feels familiar," and that's really what we go for. We're not going for accuracy. We're really going for the getting the player to feel like they're in the place and to recognize things, and that's really what's more important. And then gameplay, of course. But gameplay always trumps accuracy.
For me, because I've never been to the States, so for me it's actually something like a digital vacation. Sure. If I go to San Francisco or Chicago or any other city, and what I always found... Yes, of course. And what was one of the first things that I noticed when I started playing the game at Gamescom was, you mentioned it with the guy trying to land the RC drone on the dog. Yeah. There are actual watchdogs in Watch Dogs.
There's dogs, yeah. There's dogs in Watch Dogs. Well,
I find that awesome.
Well, San Francisco has the largest number of dogs per capita of any city in North America. So we figured it was... we'd be removing something from the city if we didn't have dogs. So yeah, we put dogs in there. You can pet their heads if you want, and yes. There's guard dogs that you unfortunately have to shoot, but you can knock them out. You don't have to kill them. Just so you know, dog lovers don't think I'm a terrible person. And we also have seagulls and sea lions, and because they're also part of the city. You know, if you go to Pier 39, there's actually a dock where the sea lions have, or seals? I don't know, I'm not clear on the difference right now.
Ones are these with the pointy ears, and the other ones are
flat,
with the flat.
But which one's which? Yeah. I'm sorry to any, anthropologists. No, not anthropologists.
Okay, first let's insult the animals, then the people.
Then the people.
That's great. Cities next.
Yes. San Francisco sucks. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, we have seals because San Francisco has that in the game. There's a dog that's been taken over by seals or sea lions. Again, back to that debate. And so we had to have that, So we've added animals to the game, even though it's not exactly a huge gameplay benefit, but it really adds to the feel of the city for sure.
That's the thing, You design a large world. You have near infinite possibilities with all the missions, side quests, collectibles, and so on. And then you have time for details such as this. I noticed that one of the first things actually I noticed when I started playing the game at Gamescom was there are leaves on the roof of a car. And I was like, okay, a colleague of yours was trying to explain stuff from the game, and I was like, please, can you hold on a second? I have to try something. And I had to get into the car to see if the leaves fall off when you drive, and they do. Yeah. So
we call it confetti.
Yeah.
It's called confetti. It's actually a technology where you reproduce kind of the physics of confetti, and then you just make it larger, and it becomes leaves. So it's it's something that we have. Those details are really what add the little touch to the game. If those things aren't there, people say, oh, this is a good game, but they're not kind of, like you were kind of blown away by that little thing. And maybe you're 1% of the people, but if you sell 1 million copies, 1% is still 10,000 people, which is a good number of people to impress. So we do put those details in there. That's very important, and there's stuff like that all over the game. Little touches, but then also obviously we did work the fundamentals. That's obviously what's more important.
And I think there's a lot of when you program areas, and so you are a fanboy maybe yourself, and you think this is a good place for an Easter egg, something, a cool hidden thing, and some people might notice it, some people might not. But what I noticed at the first area of the game that I saw at Gamescom, there is a guy smoking a cigarette on the side of the street.
Oh, yeah?
Are you still allowed to do that? Do you have to print like warning labels of that size onto the game box if you do that?
I don't. Maybe I know that the rating boards will always have something about cigarettes.
Peggy will say.
Yeah, Peggy will say there's smoking in here. But we're a game. We're an adult game, so we're not too concerned. I mean, I always find it weird that you can shoot someone in the head, but then also that smoking is a bad thing. Well, in this case, we provide a lot of alternatives to shooting, so I think we're a less violent game than some other games out there. So, okay, somebody smokes, no big deal. It's not the player who's smoking. Yeah. That's the key, I guess. So, it's another person who's doing that. I'm okay with that,
And you noticed, you mentioned the player character. We have a different protagonist in Watch Dogs 2. What can you tell us about Marcus? How is he different to Aiden from the first game?
Well, Marcus is he's a guy from Oakland, a brilliant hacker who came out of Oakland. And what else can I say about him? He's kind of a cool guy. He joins DedSec and that's pretty much what the game is all about.
That's everything you can tell us without going into spoiler territory.
Well, I kind of want to avoid that. But it's true that I because I am the director of the world, I don't have a quick answer for who Marcus is, which is I'm very sorry. I'm very disappointed in myself about that. I really like him. He can change his clothes to be anything. He likes to dance. He likes to flirt with the ladies, and he likes long walks on the beach.
We're talking about the game, not about a dating site.
Okay,
but
one
thing that I recall when the first Watch Dogs game was released, it had a huge hype after the first demos, after the first cutscenes and elements of the games were shown. But in the end, the game left some players disappointed because, the graphical engine, especially on consoles, didn't hold up to the standards they were expecting after that first material. Yeah. Which steps did you take and what did you do to avoid that this time?
Well, the full story is that the demos that we showed that got everybody excited was about 2 years before the consoles came out. So everybody saw this game. They said, this is what next gen is going to be about. And somehow that stayed razor sharp in their mind, that is what next gen will be, and especially that is what Watch Dogs will be. But the problem is that when the consoles came out, we found out that the specs of the consoles were not as ambitious, or, were not able to reach the quality that we were looking for. And so we did have to pull back again, of course, in order to actually have the game run properly on the new consoles. So that's the biggest reason for these changes. What people don't notice who talk about this this change in graphics quality is that the year after we were at E3 and that demo was exactly like it would be in game. So we were actually using the same engine. So what have we done this time around? Basically, the biggest difference is now we know the specs of the consoles, so we were able to work directly with them. I have a PlayStation 4 on my desk. I'm constantly playing with PlayStation 4. I've been doing that for 2 years now. That's our reference now. We know that console, and the gamescom demo that you saw, that was running on PS4. Yep. So there's no need to reduce quality anymore in order to make it run. It's already running. It already works. We just need to optimize, but we optimize for a box that we understand. So that's the answer. It's the game that you see is the game you're going to see.
But there is new hardware because we don't just have the PS4. We now have the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One S. Are you going to factor these into the development of the game? Will the game run in 4K on any of those consoles?
I actually don't know the answer to that, but that's mainly because what I do is the parts of the game that I build are at full resolution, and then it's the engine team, the programmers, that will do the that will basically do the conversions, as it will, in order to make it run on the different consoles. So I'd imagine that that they have a plan for this. It would really surprise me if they didn't, but you can't quote me on that exactly. I'd imagine that it'll look great on those consoles as well. And usually those consoles, they do kind of a graphics upgrade as well. So a normal game will look better anyway because it's running on 4K.
So, Falko, I say thanks a lot for talking to us. It's been great. I wish you all the best for Watch Dogs 2 and the future. Yes. And right now, I'm going to go pet some sea lions or seals or whatever these things are called.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good job.